Awesome. So we've been all hearing a lot about growth, right? That's kind of been the big message since inbound last year. And I think everybody needs to stop and think about what I call prescriptive growth, right? So we have two funnels that we need to fill it all the time, right? So you need to generate as many leads as possible as you scale. You also have to think about your recruiting funnel and how you're filling that funnel to keep hiring the best talent and bringing those folks in so you can build your business and actually deliver. And it's even more important, right, for us service providers out there that we have to scale at the right time and always have this like bench of folks that we want to bring in. So I've been talking a lot about that. And last year, we launched 52 websites on the COS in 2014. So that's about one a week, right? So which was kind of fun and a little crazy. But one thing I learned about every single one of those, and this is all the way up to publicly traded companies that are doing $1 billion to, mid-market folks that are around, 2 to 3 million in revenue and just really getting started, is they don't invest enough in the career section of their website. It's the afterthought, and every single one, and they all think about the bottom of the funnel, right? Does anyone else have anything besides apply now on their career section? And that's the only thing that people can do to engage. So I think we need to start thinking about that process like we think about the lead gen funnel and bringing folks in, and that's what I'm going to talk about today. So since I've been at New Breed, I made about 17 new hires. We've made 20 intern hires as well, so we keep about 5 to 6 interns at any given time. Dana's over there, our director of operations, heads up all of our recruiting process, and we kind of looked at it and said, this is a little clunky how we used to be doing it. How can we leverage what we're doing on the sales side and bring it over to recruiting? So we're in Burlington, Vermont, not a huge place, so you can do this really in any geographic area. The one thing I would say that we have a benefit is we're in a triangle of 3 colleges. So we have Champlain, which is like a web design school, more on the developer track. We have St. Mike's, which is known for journalism, so we get a lot of our content folks from there. And then we have UVM, which we get a lot of like our analytics and our sales folks from. So we've created this good ecosystem within our college, but we spend a lot of time nurturing that relationship. But I think if you're near a school, leverage that. There's lots of young, talented digital natives that are super fast to learn. Get them in, bring them through the process, and get them certified right off the bat. So leveraging your inbound process to grow your team, right? So I'm not going to talk about anything that none of us should, I hope, already know, right? Is build a funnel, don't go right to the bottom of the funnel, pull folks through, nurture them, and people just aren't thinking about this in the recruiting space. So really emphasize, and we got some cool stats that really over the last month since I presented this at the Growth Summit have really started to take off. So just like in sales, right, I do a lot of selling for New Breed still, so kind of came over and I was like, okay, right, we always used to be the always be closing, and then we moved on to always be helping, right? Well, on the recruiting side, we always need to be recruiting, right? So especially as how fast we're accelerating, and again, thinking about this prescriptive growth idea, and being very calculated how fast you grow and when, but it's still hard, right? So all of a sudden we get a large new retainer account for $100,000, and the next thing you know, you need to be bringing in 2 inbound strategists, right? So great, but how can we always be looking at our funnel, looking at it on the sales side, and matching that up with the recruiting process? So kind of how we go about top of funnel, employee referrals. We put that out. Not a lot of money, but people absolutely use it, love it. Just got one yesterday. Folks were out for graduation weekend in Burlington, ran into the guy who was magna cum laude out of the business school. Looks like he wants to do a job in marketing. Was thinking about between Vermont and Boston, would love to stay if he found the right job. Great. Employee came in, submitted him into the employee referral. It's a form inside HubSpot. Great, shoots an automated email off to Dana. Local colleges and universities, so that's been a big emphasis on us. We both, Dana and myself both graduated from UVM's business school, so we've been leveraging that network, but it's been fantastic, even from an alumni standpoint, right? So internships, everyone at New Breed who comes in, I was actually an intern in 2008, so I'm really the perfect case study that you can start as an intern. I moved us from ACT to Salesforce. That was my summer internship. and you can grow as fast as you want. So we really have a lot of folks at Newbreed that have done really successful, and they've started, as interns. Hug events. So we have our Hug in November that's focused on, what is it like to have a career in inbound marketing right after school? Building that presence, educating them early on, and we're going to start promoting that to bring people in sooner and sooner, so that way they're educated about what we do, how they can get involved in the industry, what HubSpot is, and we haven't tested that one out yet, but I'm really excited. And we're actually going to do that up on 2 university campuses. So instead of hosting it at our office, make it easy for them, right? So top local tech companies, so poaching, I think is a big thing, right? So we're fortunate that there's some good tech talent in the area, but we're smaller and up and coming. So finding those folks there's a company that reached about 900 employees in the software industry. Finding those folks that are at that mid-level, they can't grow up in their career-wise, bringing them over and saying, hey, if you got in where you were at your last organization at 25, 30 people, look where you'd be today, right? So bringing them in, getting them into the dream, and getting them out of their existing kind of more corporate mentality. And then hackathons for the development side, hosting hackathons, bring in local talent. They love to host these events at our office, have a bunch of developers get together, get to know each other, get to learn more about Newbreed, but just by casually conversations during the hackathons that we're sponsoring. So those have been some of our top of funnel activities, but just really always focusing on recruiting. All right, so we all know about personas, right? So we actually, inside our HubSpot portal, we have a applicant Andy persona. Lists out exactly who we're looking for. So kind of going through that whole process that you would on the inbound side from a lead gen standpoint and saying, okay, who's exactly the ideal applicant for Newbreed, and what are the characteristics, and how do they fit in our culture code, and starting to build a pipeline of those folks. So I know HubSpot's done this. I haven't heard of any other partners doing it. If you have, awesome. Really recommend doing the culture code. We took about 2 full working days at a retreat with our whole leadership team to kind of get the first iteration, and then we put it out to employees and kind of got feedback. And really successful process, and it is our #1 tool for recruiting, right? And we do 2 interview process, right? We'll do the skills-based, we'll do the culture-based, 2 different tracks, and really successful and really weeding out those folks early on. We'll actually start with the culture, and I'll go a little bit more in depth on that in our process, but highly recommend that. So here's just a few of the bullet points from it. So top 7 things, right? So thinking about your own organizations, what does that mean? It's going to be completely different for you guys, different for HubSpot. Netflix has a great example of it as well. And thinking about what it means to be, X, Y, and Z at your organization, what makes you unique, and what are those characteristics that you want every single employee to embody, and if they don't fit, fire them. Honestly, let them go, figure it out, they'll move on. You know why? Because there's a company that they are an ideal fit for, and help them find that. It sounds a little harsh, but I really recommend, and it doesn't need to be in a mean way, but we've done it at Uber. We sat down with one key employee and just said, you know what, you're doing a great job, but you really just don't fit. And turns out he's at an outdoor company doing graphic design, loves his new job, sent us a thank you email recently saying, you know what, I was totally in my comfort zone. I didn't really know how to break it. I used to think this is where I wanted to be, but I'm really more passionate about this. Encourage them to go do it. So firing or letting go or whatever it is, don't think about it as always a negative thing. Help them figure out what that right thing is for them. And so we absolutely hire and fire by our culture code. So let's talk about inbound recruiting process. So and I really just think everyone thinks about recruiting completely still in the old way we used to think about sales and marketing, right? Complete traditional, like maybe I'll go up to a campus and I'll get a table and I'll do some, tabling events, or it's word of mouth networking. Well, wait a second, we've got this great content engine. If right now one of your best dream hires was on your website, would you guys know about it? if they were reading anything? My guess is not, until you actually had something for them to engage with before they got to the actual apply now. So thinking about that, right? So how can you put that content out there? What does that look like? How do we start nurturing folks? And we have this great tool. Little downside with the tool, right, is the fact that it skews your analytics a little bit, but we think it's worth it. Been having several conversations with Dharmesh about how could we maybe exclude that, and say certain pictures, certain areas, those kind of things, content offers. Excuse me. So thinking about how we can leverage that, you can back out the data so it doesn't skew it that much. It's like, okay, let's just take our reports, anything on these, subdomain careers, exclude from our actual marketing analytics. But thinking about getting that brand preference from those folks long before they're actually ready to make that next move. And that comes in big with like the poaching and folks at other organizations. So since the last time I gave this presentation, it was still theory, right? So we were testing it out about a month ago. We've gotten a lot of applicants through it, but we hadn't made an actual hire from this whole process. And we made our first hire. So actually a former HubSpotter, Andy, he's nicely and gracefully said we could use this old digital body language. So he was out there searching for the next thing, wanted to move to Burlington. His fiance had just got relocated to Burlington, but didn't know exactly what he wanted to do and knew about New Breed from the ecosystem. But again, here he was on our site, but he was engaging with our culture code, and we could see that. So the great part was before he was ready to do it, we knew we actually had someone actually out there and interested. So I'll just walk through Andy's process of becoming a New Breed employee. So this is our culture code. It's right out on the careers page. We have it in two forms. You can download it, or you can actually see it in SlideShare as well. But folks come in, actually engage with it. It's our first top-of-funnel content offer, if you will. So from the middle of the funnel standpoint, we actually have all of the forms to be inside of HubSpot. So actually putting in their resume and all of their profiles, and all of that gets emailed over to Dana and automatically tags them as lifecycle stage other and changes the contact info to Dana and then sends out an automated nurture email. So that way it actually says, hey, great, got your resume, nice little note from Dana, we'll follow up with you, and gets put in the nurture stream. So it's a little hard to see, and I'll make sure the deck's available, but basically here's Andy from the first time he visited the site all the way to the point that he actually, we changed life cycle stage to evangelist when they become a employee. So thinking about kind of from start to finish, how many times he visited the site. Interesting, right? You guys do interviews, you go back, right? Do they go back to the site? Are they there the day before, doing more research on your organization? You get to learn exactly how much due diligence they did ahead of time. So every time in between interviews, we're all just kind of logging in, checking what's going on, seeing how everybody's engaging. Yeah.
I know it's not your form there. You asked me to upload the resume.
Yeah.
Did you do that on HubSpot?
Yeah.
See something?
Yep.
Really? Okay.
Yep. So.
Yeah, there's a file.
Yeah. So great question, and feel free anyone else to jump in.
We do the same, and we give them extra points in our lead scoring for it.
Yeah. So that's the only thing right now we haven't actually kind of partitioned our lead scoring off of like our existing like lead score. So everyone coming in and they're actually getting such a negative because they're not a lead that kind of need to know like what between negative what and negative this could actually be a good hire. But besides that, you can do it.
Do you have in their qualification, is there like kind of a cutoff, like if they don't at least do their research, you don't bother interviewing them, or?
It depends on the candidate, I would say. I mean, Dana, how many do you think you got in the last 2 days? 25, 30?
Yeah, way too many. Way too many. So yeah, I mean, it definitely helps to narrow down quite a few. But I will say we still get a lot of direct referrals, and regardless of their activity, if they've got a good referral, I always send it to them. So.
Yeah.
You force them to go through the process if they want to apply, like if you have a referral from someone else, do you tell them, okay, go apply?
Exactly,
online
so-
you can do the whole thing.
Dana says, great, I would love to get a copy of your resume, sends them a link to the form, right, just like you would an inbound sales process, and actually has it all come through that. So yeah, just leverage the tool that you guys already have access. The whole methodology and process is not any different. So bringing those folks in, watching what they do at each stage of the interview process, which is really interesting, right? So if they come in, you have a great interview, but then they don't do anything on the site, you're like, oh, wait a second, how interested are they? How often are they coming back? Did they actually read your culture code? Or when they're in the meeting and they say, oh, totally, I'm a great fit because of the culture, and you try to quiz them on it, and you're kind of like, oh, wait a second, I already know you didn't read it. So let's not waste each other's time, you're not a good fit. So here's one of our nurture emails that goes out, right? So just personalization. So that way we can kind of send it out in an automated fashion and makes it more scalable, right? Dana's finance and operations. So let's talk about the bottom of the funnel. So thinking about this, right? So we do 3 rounds of interviews and one culture-focused interview that's really focused on that culture code. But one thing we've been testing out recently that we've had a lot of success is we have a staged dinner interview. And what I mean by staged is kind of the last round, if they make it in, is go out to dinner with them, take a couple of your new breeders or your folks at your organization, and have like 3 or 4 of them come later in the night and just kind of say, oh, we're going to go out and grab some drinks or do something afterwards and see how the people react to it, see if they can actually fit in and have a social conversation with these folks. We ended up taking Andy out to pizza. I think 12 folks from our organization that ended up showing up. He did an amazing job. Happened to be a guy from New Breed in a band that night, so then we walked over to the band, and he got the full exposure. It was like a 12-hour interview. But it was worth the investment, right? Because we all know how much it costs if we have that bad hire, right? So thinking about putting that extra time in, we've found a lot of success in kind of mixing things up, going through a different formal process, and having these staged, and then getting feedback from the employees who came and said, hey, how did you interact with them? What are your thoughts?
That's a great idea. We've actually invited potential hires to our hub events and thrown them in and observe them, like networking with other people and our agency to see if they don't network with other people, if they aren't really interested in engaging with the content. But what about people who are not local? What do you do with someone who's more remote? Do you require them to come in?
Yeah, so we'll do like first round of interviews, remote, kind of go through that. But yeah, we're going to be bringing them in. Andy was in Cambridge, not too far, but yeah, we definitely going to have an in-person interview. I think it's super important. Again, if they're interested in, we have never had to pay for someone to come up and travel. They've always been interested in doing it anyway. So that group dinner thing, test it out. Depends on your culture, again, kind of what the setting. We're a fairly young organization, so drinks and a concert isn't going to throw people off too much. Really successful on just getting to know what other people think and then watching their reaction. And the great part about it, for say, like if Dana and I are out to dinner and then we do the drinks part and people come in, takes the pressure off of us of kind of being there on the spot, and we can sit back and observe and just kind of watch the dynamic unfold. And so where do I think that this needs to go is even the culture code's great, but trying to think about what do you really want to know before you switch jobs, right? So for us, it's either you're an intern in school or you've actually at an existing employer and you want to come over. So thinking about, content offers, right? So why did our last 3 hires choose New Breed? And we just put this content offer up today. But basically, what is a day in a life of a new breeder, and why did I make this decision? And what's my first week going to look like? Or what is our one-on-one process? And thinking about a lot of that education so they can experience your organization long before they're actually applying to a job. And I think that documenting this is great. How many people actually have a formal new employee onboarding process? Awesome. I see a lot of organizations drop that, right? And so a lot of that content can just get pulled in here. and actually made it more public facing. So, pictures of your office if they're remote, getting to see what the culture is going to be like, what are employees doing for after-hour activities, those kind of things. Kind of giving them as much of a snapshot. I know HubSpot does a lot of videos on that side, same thing, but really thinking about how can I educate them just like we would in the inbound for lead gen. So, sorry, went into my next slide, but that onboarding, right? So for us, we have, say if it's an intern that's moving up into an employee, everybody's coming in fully certified before their start date. And then we go through SMART goals. So every week they get a one-on-one where we're going through their SMART goals. We talk about what their BHAGs are and going into that kind of level of detail with them, putting together kind of training plans, and then getting them prepped to be an evangelist. Like if I walked in and said, hey, X, Y, and Z employee, and I didn't know, they didn't know who I was, could, they say your 30-second elevator speech and why you were founded and what was the founder's past before, and all of those talking points. So putting together like kind of a one sheet on like and quizzing them on it, right? So that way when they come in, they can actually speak about exactly your brand promise and those kind of things. And I think too many people move too quickly and just kind of say, great, we've been needing, because they didn't have a good pipeline, I just need to go and you need to start your job, but kind of thinking about the first couple of weeks of really being, if not longer, actually being kind of like going back to college, and you got to learn new breed. So just go through some key takeaways and then we can go into questions. So, leverage inbound recruiting, get creative to find talent, put some time and investment towards there, develop a candidate persona, culture code. Again, it's painful, I will admit. There'll be a lot of arm wrestling and kind of deep conversations and people going back and forth, and especially with like, one thing we've struggled with is like, what is that? Culture code's really easy to kind of think a lot about like extroverted people, but when you start to apply it to introverted people and the developer community, they don't exactly look the same as the salespeople, so how do you capture it for everyone? But it's totally worth it. Create an application landing page, upload the resume, capture all of that information, and then, get some workflows set up. And you guys have this awesome tool, doesn't cost you any more money, and let's see, we got so far, since we've started, we had about 89 applications in the last month and a half, 2 months, and we've made 4 hires out of that inbound process. So it's pretty cool to see all the way through.